In a small village nestled in the shadow of the towering Himalayas, there lived a boy named Lhakpa. The rugged landscape of Nepal was his home, a place where nature's beauty and cruelty were intertwined. From an early age, Lhakpa felt a deep connection to the mountains that surrounded him, especially to one in particular, Mount Everest. Known locally as Sagarmatha and Chomolungma in Tibetan, Everest was more than just a mountain. It was a symbol of strength, mystery, and the ultimate challenge. For Lhakpa, it was his destiny. As a child, Lhakpa would sit for hours on a rocky hill, watching the majestic Everest pierce the clouds, its icy slopes shimmering in the distance. The villagers spoke of the mountain with reverence, describing it as both a wonder and a graveyard for the brave who attempted to conquer it. Yet, while many feared the mountain, Lhakpa was filled with awe. He didn't just want to gaze at Everest, he wanted to stand on its summit. But in a village where survival was a daily struggle, dreams like this were seen as impossible fantasies. His family was poor, like most in the village, and their days were spent working tirelessly in the fields or herding yaks to make a living. Lhakpa's father, a stoic man hardened by the difficulties of mountain life, had little patience for what he saw as his son's foolishness. "Climbing Everest? What nonsense," he would often say. "You can't eat dreams. We have to survive here, Lhakpa. Don't waste your time with such foolish thoughts." His mother, though gentler, shared the same concerns. She worried about her son's obsession, knowing well the dangers that awaited anyone who dared challenge the mighty Everest. His friends laughed at him too. "You, Lhakpa? Climb Everest?" they would jeer. "You can't even afford proper shoes. You'll never make it." But Lhakpa was different. Where others saw only obstacles, he saw challenges to overcome. While his family and friends scoffed, he nurtured his dream in silence, knowing that one day he would prove them all wrong. His heart burned with an unshakable belief that he was meant for something more. He didn't know how he would do it, but deep inside, he knew he would find a way to stand on top of the world. As he grew older, the dream only grew stronger, but so did the harsh realities of life. In his village, money was scarce, and opportunities were even scarcer. Lhakpa's family expected him to contribute to the household by working alongside them in the fields and tending to the animals. But he knew that if he ever wanted to climb Everest, he needed more than just hard work. He needed money, equipment, and training. And for a boy from a poor village, all of that seemed like an impossible mountain to climb on its own. But Lhakpa wasn't the type to give up. Determined to chase his dream, he started taking on any job he could find. He became a porter for trekking groups, carrying heavy loads of gear and supplies for foreign tourists who came to explore the mountains. Though the work was backbreaking, he saw it as a small step toward his goal. Every rupee he earned was tucked away, saved for the day he would need to buy climbing equipment. He worked as a herder, guiding yaks through narrow, treacherous mountain passes, and as a farmhand, working in the fields from dawn till dusk. Each job was harder than the last, but Lhakpa bore the weight of every task with a smile, knowing that it was bringing him closer to Everest. Years passed, and Lhakpa's dream had not faded, but the obstacles were relentless. His friends, now grown into men with families of their own, still ridiculed him. "You're still chasing that dream?" they would ask. "We've moved on, Lhakpa. It's time you did too." His family, especially his father, grew impatient. "When will you stop this nonsense?" his father demanded. "You should be helping us more. We're getting old, and you're wasting your life chasing a mountain." But no matter how much doubt surrounded him, Lhakpa held on. He continued saving every penny, slowly gathering the gear he needed. A second-hand jacket here, a pair of old climbing boots there. Each piece of equipment was a hard-earned victory. He studied maps of Everest, read stories of climbers who had made the attempt, and even those who had perished trying. For every tale of success, there were 100 stories of failure and death. But none of this deterred him. In fact, it fueled his resolve. He knew the risks, he knew the dangers, but he also knew that his dream was worth it. Finally, after years of preparation, the day came. Lhakpa had scraped together enough money, collected enough equipment, and found a climbing team that would allow him to join them. His family, while still worried, had finally resigned themselves to the fact that Lhakpa would not be swayed. His mother gave him a tearful goodbye, while his father, though still stern, offered a quiet blessing. The journey to Everest was long and grueling, but Lhakpa's spirit was high. For the first time, he was standing at the base of the very mountain he had dreamed about his entire life. As he gazed up at its towering peaks, a mixture of fear and excitement coursed through him. The climb would be the ultimate test, not just of his physical strength, but of his determination and willpower. The ascent began, and almost immediately, Lhakpa realized the true magnitude of the challenge before him. The freezing winds bit at his skin, and the air grew thinner with every step. The higher they climbed, the more the mountain seemed to resist. Avalanches thundered in the distance, a constant reminder of how small and vulnerable they were in the face of nature's wrath. The cold was unbearable, and his hands and feet went numb despite his best efforts to stay warm. Yet, Lhakpa pushed on. The days turned into a blur of exhaustion and pain. Every step was harder than the last, and the oxygen levels became dangerously low. Breathing was a struggle, and the physical toll on his body was immense. The thought of turning back crossed his mind more than once, but each time he banished it. He hadn't come this far to quit. He thought of the years of sacrifice, the ridicule he had endured, and the countless hours of work. He thought of his village, his family, and the dream that had kept him going all these years. He couldn't fail now. As the summit grew closer, the challenges intensified. His body screamed for rest, but he refused to stop. The weather was unpredictable, with sudden snowstorms that blinded them and freezing winds that made every movement an ordeal. Some members of his team began to falter, but Lhakpa's spirit was unbroken. He had waited his whole life for this moment, and nothing, no storm, no exhaustion, no fear, could stop him. Then, after what felt like an eternity, the summit was in sight. Lhakpa's heart pounded in his chest as he took the final steps. The moment he had dreamed of for so long was finally here. As he reached the top of Everest, he stood still, overwhelmed by emotion. The world stretched out before him, an endless expanse of clouds and sky. He had done it. The boy who had grown up in the shadow of the mountain had conquered it. Tears filled his eyes and froze on his cheeks, but his heart was ablaze with triumph. Lhakpa raised his arms to the sky, feeling the wind whip around him. He had defied the odds, silenced the doubters, and achieved the impossible. He had climbed Mount Everest, not just for himself, but for everyone who had ever been told that their dreams were out of reach. His story was proof that no matter how many obstacles stand in the way, with enough determination, anything is possible.